Hello, good afternoon, good evening. Feel free to get a test drive of the audio today. Throw a little message in the chat. Make sure that we got that glitch fixed this week. Somebody mind giving us a hello through the audio today?
Hello.
Yay! We're back. We're back in the game. Good evening. Good evening. We would love to hear your voices. Welcome back. Welcome back. We have a wonderful, wonderful session for you guys tonight. So happy you guys decided to join in tonight. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. You guys know how we like to start off. We like to start off with some positivity. So can we please have a couple of people, a couple of brave souls, take your devices off mute and let us know something positive that has happened for you. It doesn't have to be all academic, but just something that's positive. Let's throw some good positive energy in the atmosphere. And you can use the raise your hand feature if you like. If not, I'll just start calling on people. I know Evan has something positive to say. If not, that means his device isn't working.
I don't really have anything positive to say right now as of today, unfortunately.
You're still passing all your classes right now. You're surviving.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Sometimes surviving is good enough. Anything positive for you, Miss Deja? We got Mr. Avery. I know something positive for you, man.
Diana has her hand raised.
All right, there we go. Miss Diana, come on in.
Yes, I received my stipend for my research during the summer, and that was so great. So yeah.
Awesome, congrats.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we going to go celebrate?
Actually, I'm going to Boston to visit some schools. So I am very excited. Yeah.
Awesome. Congratulations. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started tonight. And thank you for sharing. We have Dr. Valdez tonight. She shared with us last week. For those that have not met Dr. Valdez, she has a kind of a workshop seminar that she's been doing for a few years now with getting your PhD, around PhD, why not me, funding the PhD, kind of all things PhD related. And so tonight, we have a wonderful opportunity to discuss the finances, which is great that our positive for today was around finances. I think it's very important for us to eliminate as many things negative from our minds as it pertains to us deciding to pursue that PhD. So I'm happy that Dr. Valdez is bringing this topic to us tonight. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We do want your engagement. So for those that are new, it's okay to put something in the chat feature. It's okay to put something in the Q&A box. Please feel free to raise your hand. Your questions, your comments, your feedback lets us know that you're getting what you need from this dialogue. And I promise you, the question you don't ask is a problem. The question that's on your mind, this is a safe space to get it out. There's no judgment. So please interact with her tonight. And Dr. Valdez, the show's yours.
Dr. Valdez?
Yeah, I see her trying to.
Thank you. I was having a hard time unmuting myself. Can you hear me? Can I get a thumbs up?
Yes,
We can hear
ma'am.
you. We
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
see you.
I'm not sure you're hearing me.
We can hear you well.
Brian, are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am. There seems to be a issue with her listening to us tonight.
I can hear you now. Okay.
Oh,
You can hear me
awesome.
and I can hear
Yes,
you.
ma'am. We're
Oh
back.
my goodness. I always make fun of people who do stuff like that. And here I am having that issue. Anyway, something's wonky with my screen. I am so excited to talk to y'all about funding your graduate school. I love that our opening conversation, both in the chat and also our brave attendee who is willing to share, were around funding and getting paid this week, because that's really our topic, is about getting paid to go to grad school. And so I, as Brian introduced, am Dr. Cammi Valdez. I am an assistant professor at Northeastern State University in chemistry. I'm currently the immediate past president of the McNair Association of Professionals, and I'm also an LSAMP alum. So I was in the Oklahoma LSAMP program when I was an undergrad. So I've been in your very shoes, a little bit, a couple years, but I was in your shoes one time too. And so I'm thrilled to be on the other side here, getting to share with you ways that you can get your PhD for free. So we're going to start out. We do have a couple of polls. Deb, do you have those ready?
First one's launched, Dr. Valdez.
Perfect. So we have, what is your class year? I just want to get a temperature check of who is attending tonight, so I can adjust and see how to help you best. All right, looks like we have quite a mix of folks here. We've got almost a pretty even split, with a little bit of emphasis on juniors attending tonight. So thanks for that first response. We can go ahead and share those results so that others. Oh, it says failed to share. Okay, and
Yeah,
are we doing
here.
the next poll?
One second.
Okay, no worries. Thanks, Deb.
It says failure to start other poll.
Technology is not our friend right now.
I know. What is going on?
It's like it's our first time doing this, and it's not.
I know. Okay, I'm going to say launch and see if it'll do. That's failure to start. Oh, my. All right, y'all, give me 1 second. I'm going to duplicate that
No
poll. We're going to try to fake out post webinar, pre-webinar. All right, let's see if we can get that one. There we go.
There
I
we
just
go. There we
duplicated it.
go.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So please take a second and go ahead and fill out this one. We want to hear about what are your thoughts on going to grad school as you're coming into this session. I want to see where everyone's at. Those are some quick selections, y'all. All right, looks like we've got almost everybody filling it out. So here you can see the results. We've got 21% of our folks who are definitely going. We've got 29 on the border, 29% on the border, 21% still considering, and 21% pretty even split once again. Thinking grad school is not for them. And then we've got 7% who are interested in professional school. So still interested in graduate school, but on the professional side of things. So, it's great that all of y'all are here today. And hopefully by the end of this, I can convince some of you why you should be planning to go to PhD and get it for free. So we'll go ahead and jump into the presentation. Thanks y'all for participating. And as Brian said, please stop me if you have questions, throw some questions into the chat or raise your hand and we'll pause. We'll make sure that we're getting your questions answered throughout tonight's session. All right, so here's our agenda for what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start with just an overview of graduate school funding, some definitions, so we're all on the same page, a little bit about funding package options, and then some examples from real schools. And then we'll jump into the other side of funding, which is fellowships. So that's where you apply separately to funding, and we'll talk about a couple different opportunities that you should definitely be looking into, knowing what to know when applying, and then finally where to find those fellowships. So right now we'll start with our grad school funding overview and a little on our definitions. So make sure we're all on the same page. I am, after all, a chemistry professor, and so nomenclature matters. And so we'll start with a fellowship. So fellowships are grants to pay your stipend or your tuition and fees in graduate schools that you do not pay back. And we will spend some time talking specifically about external fellowships on the second half of this talk today. And then scholarships are grants to pay your tuition and fees in undergrad. So you all may be fairly familiar. Everybody who filled out our poll today was an undergrad. And so you may be very familiar with scholarships at this stage of your academic career. Financial aid is loans. Those are loans that you have to pay back. So it's money that you get, but you have to pay it back over time and usually with interest. And then we have two terms that will probably be new to you. So teaching assistantship, or TA-ship, is what I'll call it. And this is a stipend that you get paid by teaching in graduate school. And then we have research assistantship, or RA-ship. And again, this is a stipend that's paid in this case for research during graduate school. And so scholarships are not going to be applicable to this conversation because these are for undergrads, and financial aid is also not going to be applicable to this conversation because we do not want you taking out loans to go to your PhD. We want you to go for free. So these are not the things that we're focusing on. So we will just focus in on these three types of funding for this conversation. And again, your goal is to go to graduate school for free and to get paid doing it. So let's talk about how we can do that now. So let's imagine that you are applying to grad school, you're in the process, and you've found out that you've been admitted to your school, your dream school. Now what? So now the hard decisions really start once you've gotten that admittance letter, and you maybe have lots of offers that you're considering as you think about, where you want to be for your PhD. So I always say to start with that funding package, really review the information that they give you. So once you've been admitted to grad school, you really, really want to read that information. So we are going to start by focusing on the top half of this, and then we'll get to the bottom half of this chart in the second half of this talk. So you want to start with asking the question, are they providing funding? And so if the answer is yes, and that's the side of this that we're focusing on right now, You want to find out how many years that you are funded. So some programs will offer funding for the first 4 years, or they may offer funding, until completion. They may offer funding for, 5 years, 6 years, some of them maybe even 10 years, right? Up to 10 years for you to complete that PhD. But you need to know what that is. And so you really have to read and review that funding package. Sometimes schools will have this information right up front on their website, so you can actually see it as an applicant, as a prospective student, but sometimes you do have to wait until you're admitted to get those details. And once you find out what funding, how many years are offered, then you want to figure out what type of funding is being offered. So is it a teaching assistantship, or is it a research assistantship, or is it some combination? And so if it's teaching that they're offering for you, you want to find out how that these are assigned or identified, these teaching opportunities, because sometimes you could end up teaching something that you are not familiar with, or it's a little bit outside the scope of what you're interested in. So you want to make sure that you are, you know what that process looks like. You also want to know if those are guaranteed. So sometimes teaching spots are kind of first come, first serve. So the person who's able to connect with the professor and set that up early is going to definitely get that opportunity. And if you don't, then what happens, right? What happens if you're not able to secure that teaching opportunity? So you want to find out if it's guaranteed. On the research assistantship or RA-ship, you want to find out if the department or does the department or does your individual lab pay? And so it doesn't make a ton of difference to you as a student initially, but it does make some difference, right? So if the department is paying that RA-ship, even for the first or second year, then that gives you some flexibility versus when your lab's paying for it. So that means that your PI, your faculty mentor has a grant that can pay for you. Well, then you need a faculty mentor who has enough grants to be able to support graduate students. And so that may limit or change what labs are available to you to join for your PhD. So where the funding comes from does matter in the long run for you. All right, so we'll talk a little more about these funding packages and what they really look like now. I do see something in the chat. Oh, just Brian reminding everybody to raise your hands if there's something that you want to pause and talk about. So please do feel free to be part of this conversation. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you, so I'm happy to pause as you all have questions. So let's look at a couple of examples of what this funding can look like. So these are some examples that folks shared with me about their funding packages. And so we'll start with the University of Kentucky. This was for their molecular, cellular, and developmental biology program. I will state here that I have no skin in the game for any of these schools really that I'm representing, maybe for my alma mater, but just that, these are just representative and to give you a flavor of what funding packages can look like in the PhD. And so here, again, these may have changed a little bit. This is from about a year ago, this data, so they might be slightly different right now, but this is just a snapshot. And so here, tuition was around $18,000 a year. And so that was provided by the institution. And so the cost to the student is $0 for that $18,000 in tuition. Fees were all combined about $480 a year. This is not provided by the institution, so you owe that $480. Health insurance, we did not have information on what the amount was, but it was provided by the institution, so the cost to the student was nothing. The annual stipend for this program was just over $21,000 for the 9-month school year, and then $2,000 for summer work study. Again, provided by the institution, doesn't cost anything. This is money in your pocket, right, for going to school. So this is what you would use, this $23,500. You would use that to pay for this $480 in fees. You would also use this money to pay for your rent, for your, if you have a car, your utilities, your food, all of those normal everyday living expenses. And so that's why they provide that stipend for you, because your job is to earn that PhD. So your job is to go and take your classes, teach courses if you are on an assistantship. So down here, it says the teaching requirements. Throughout the program, teaching is required if you're on an assistantship, and that teaching is guaranteed as part of that program. The funding structure here, they said the G1, that means graduate year 1, through your 6th year has a TA ship. RA ships are available if the PI has funding. So it really depends on whether the PI has the funding available to be able to pay you, and then you don't have to teach. But they do have that guaranteed teaching throughout the 6 years of this program. So that's a pretty good package. So you're getting you're getting money, getting paid to go to school to do your PhD. You're not paying for that tuition, are paying those fees, but it's not much in comparison to everything else. And then next up, we have Harvard University Grad School of Arts and Sciences. And this is actually the PhD program that I did as an undergrad, although I'll tell you that stipend is much higher than when I was a student. So this is an example from the Biomedical Sciences PhD program. And so tuition here varies by years. So the first 2 years is $22,408. Again, these are about a year old data. This is entirely provided by the institution, so there is no cost to the student. Once you become a 3rd-year grad student, that tuition drops pretty dramatically. Again, doesn't matter to you because you're not paying that $6,429. There are some fees here. The graduate student council fee is $25. That is not paid by the institution, so you owe $25. The health fee, that's $603, and the program fee, that's $3,000, and the G2 years and above are covered by the institution. So your only responsibility annually is $25. Health insurance was $1,961, again, provided by the institution. So no money to you. And then that annual stipend is $40,000. So just over $40,000. The teaching experience in this program is as professional development, and it's pretty flexible. So it's not limited to the classroom. You can do things like volunteer to teach science to underserved communities. You can do other things along those lines to get that teaching requirement. And it doesn't have to be necessarily teaching, say, an undergraduate course. The funding for this program is that the G1 year and G2 year are both funded by the department. And then after that, you get an RA-ship, research assistantship, paid by your PI, by your faculty mentor, beginning in your 3rd year and moving on. And so this is another example here, private institution. Oklahoma State University, my home state, Oklahoma. We have an example. So this was for the zoology PhD program. And again, these might be slightly different in today's market. These were about 1 year old. And so here we had our in-state tuition was $41.48, and our out-of-state is $15,775, both of which are covered by the institution. The fees here are going to be $3,105 in-state or $3,546 out-of-state, and those do cost to the student. The health insurance, again, students don't always know how much those are, especially if they're not paying for it. So I don't have the data for that, but I do know that the cost is nothing to the student. And then the stipend here was anywhere from $9,600 to $13,600. And again, that's what you're getting paid to do that research and be a graduate student. There is teaching throughout the program to receive the stipend if you are a teaching assistantship. Again, 1st and 2nd year paid by the departmentship, by the department, and then G3 plus maybe a RA-ship or might be a teaching assistantship here. And then we have Auburn University. So our final example of kind of real funding packages. Here, once again, our tuition is slightly different from in-state versus out-of-state, about $9,000 for in-state, almost $30,000 for out-of-state. But these are provided by the institution. So regardless of whether you're in-state or out-of-state student, that is free. The fees are $15,000, which is pretty high compared to all of these other ones. But again, the cost of the student is nothing. health insurance is paid by the institution, and then that graduate stipend is going to be between 18,000 and 20,000. And then the teaching experience here is as professional development, as most students are going to be on RA-ship beginning their third year. So these are 4 real examples of what funding packages can look like, and every university is going to be different. So really, you need to get that information from the school if you're able to ahead of time as a prospective student. If it's listed on the website, check it out. If it's not listed, once you're admitted to that program, definitely look through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that that's going to provide what you need to be able to survive on during graduate school. And this, let's see if are there any questions at this stage before we move over to our fellowships section?
Yeah, feel free to use the raise your hand feature or just take your device off mute, please, and thank you.
Awesome. Diana, go ahead and unmute.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Valdez. Well, it sounds wonderful that all of them have like the stipend for the first 2 years, but what if, could it be the case that we don't find a PI that is able to fund like the last 3 years? What would happen in that case? That's scary.
Yeah, that's scary. For sure. So yeah, I mean, generally speaking, if a faculty member does not have the funding to take on graduate students, they should be letting you know that up front, right? So if you're in a type of field where that you're doing rotations, laboratory rotations, that should be part of that conversation about, do they have funding? Do they have space and availability to take on a graduate student? So that should be part of your conversation. And those can be difficult conversations to have, but know that that's really normal, right? For faculty to be having these conversations, because it doesn't make sense that you would rotate and want to join a lab if it turns out that they either don't have space to even take on a student, or they don't have the funding to actually support you. Often programs will actually, at the time that you want to join a lab, there's actually a form that faculty have to sign to say that, I have the funding to support this student for X number of years. And so usually that part is taken care of, administratively. So you really shouldn't be joining a lab that you're like, they're not going to have money for me. There are, of course, occasions in which, big, R01 grants maybe are not renewed or something like that, right? Because that's never guaranteed. So if something like that happens and they lose their funding, then, that's a different conversation, right? That's later on probably that would happen. And so then, fellowships, which is the second half of this conversation, are going to help to fill that in. So if you have your own funding, then, you do have the flexibility to join a lab that maybe doesn't have the funding to support a graduate student. And again, many of these different programs, depending on the program structure, some of them do offer those TA-ships where that you can actually teach for pay, right? And so you can always, do that to get either extra funding or to provide that regular stipend funding, but it depends on the structure of the program, how much the teaching component is part of it. Of course, keeping in context that if you're teaching the whole time, that's less time than you have, to be able to do the research. So that is important as you think about time to degree as well. So if you're teaching a lot during all 6, I'm going to say 6 as an average years of your PhD, then, it's going to take you longer to complete that project, or it might not be as substantial as if you had, full-time dedication to research. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
So if we receive funding from the PI or the lab, can we also apply for fellowships, or are they excluded, or how does it work?
I think I missed the beginning of that. Did you say if you have funding from the lab, can you also apply for fellowships?
Right, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so typically they're not going to stack, right? Usually they're not going to stack. So it's not like you can get the, $20,000 from the school and add to it a $30,000 stipend from one of these like fellowships, right? So you're not going to end up 50,000, you're not going to be big money in graduate school, but you can sometimes, some programs will give you kind of a top up or a bonus for having gotten that fellowship, or sometimes even the fellowships offer, additional incentives like being able to buy a laptop or do international travel or things like that as part of the fellowship opportunity. So sometimes you can get a little bit more than what that fellowship stipend is, or if say the stipend is higher at your institution than what the fellowship offers, then your school will make up the difference, because they'll happily pay you if it was $10,000 versus $40,000 in the example of the Harvard BBS program, right? They'd happily pay you that 10,000 instead of 40. So they pay you that difference to make sure that you're getting the same as your colleagues and your peers.
Thank you.
A great questions. Anybody else questions? Feel free to do the raise your hand or just go ahead and unmute yourself before we move into fellowships. All right, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, I got on a couple of minutes late, so I hope I didn't miss it if you had already gone over it, but is there anything that we can begin doing like towards our 3rd and 4th year of school that could help us with like possible funding for graduate school? Like, I mean, like anything that we could do to like financially set ourselves up.
Yeah, I think you're joining just in time for the segue to talk about that. So as we're going to talk about fellowships next, which is really something that you do in your senior year, in your final year of undergrad is when you would start applying for these. Your junior year and your 3rd year of college, you could certainly start, trying to line up recommenders and begin thinking about these things. And that summer between junior and senior year would also be a great time to be working on, preliminary aspects of these fellowship applications, because it is daunting to do as, if you're still in college and you're trying to apply for graduate school, you're trying to apply for fellowships, pre-doctoral fellowships, and, you have these other things called courses, not to mention that because you're all LSAM scholars, you're also doing research, right? So all of that in the same semester is a little crazy. So, getting some of that stuff out of the way in the summertime is a great plan. So summer between junior and senior year is really a good time to start working on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, so we'll talk more as we continue on. So I'll go ahead and start talking a little bit about fellowships, and hopefully we'll have even more time at the end for questions. But again, if things pop up, please feel free to put them in the chat or use your raise your hand feature so we can pause and get your questions answered along the way. So let's go down the path here, this pink path at the bottom here, if they are not providing funding, or if, you want to get external funding, and we can talk a little more about why you might want external funding in just a second. So if for some reason they're not offering funding, you may want to see if they have any internal fellowships. Sometimes schools have a separate application for internal fellowships, and sometimes just applying for their PhD program makes you eligible for them. Or in the application, there's a little box that you check that says, yes, I'm interested in your fellowships. But there are times that there are separate ones. So you want to make sure that you're reading through that. An example of that is a Knight Hennessy fellowship at Stanford. So that will fund any graduate program. Does not matter if it's professional, PhD, master's, will fund any graduate program, but it is an entirely separate application. There are separate letters of recommendation, separate essays, everything. And so that's an example of one that is a specific fellowship at Stanford, but you have to apply for it separate from your actual PhD application. Then we want to look, and here's where we're going to spend most of our time, is talking about these external fellowships for the rest of this talk. So there's lots of external fellowships that you all will be eligible for. So we can talk about those next. We can also, if the program didn't have a specific funding package, you may want to see if you're eligible for teaching for pay as a graduate student, if they don't have specific teaching assistantships as part of their package. You might want to see, as a graduate student, could you do that on your own? And then last ditch resort, what financial aid, which we already talked about, is loans, are they providing? And so this is absolute worst case scenario, and I don't want that for any of you LSAM scholars. So we are not even going to talk about that. All right. So what we're going to focus the rest of tonight on is talking about pre-doctoral fellowships. And so I will talk a little bit about each of these. So there is the Ford Foundation Pre-Doctoral Fellowship, the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, the GEM Fellowship programs, the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans, and then the Bridge to the Doctorate for our LSAM scholars. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about each of these. So Ford Foundation Pre-Doctoral Fellowship offers a $27,000 stipend for 3 years. Also, I'll say here, most of these are going to be, 2 or 3 years. So they're not going to be the full 6 years. So often these are going to fund, say, your, G2 or G3 year through, G5 or something like that. So those middle years of your PhD. And so they're not going to fund the entirety. And Deb is putting in the chat some of these links here, which are shown. This is shown at the bottom here. So that link is in the chat for you so that you can go and check out this and learn more about it. So those will continue to be in the chat for you. Or if you are watching the recording later on, you can pause this video and put that in now. As a Ford Foundation Fellow, you would be invited to a Fellows conference that happens each year, and then you'd also have access to regional liaisons. This application is due this year, December 16th. So if you are a senior, this might be something you want to look into. Eligibility is U.S. citizen, national, or permanent resident, or DACA student. They say you must have a superior academic achievement, and do not let that dissuade you. If you're an LSAM scholar, you should absolutely apply for this. You are supposed to be committed to becoming a faculty member. And the reason for that is that they are looking for, increasing the diversity of the professoriate. So getting faculty members of color, to increase the numbers of the faculty of color. And I don't think I have to preach to this community about what those numbers look like in our academia. And then you have to be enrolled in a PhD or planning to be enrolled in a PhD. So seniors are eligible to go ahead and apply for that, or current graduate students. And then you have to have at least 3 years remaining in your PhD. So this isn't one you have to get at the very beginning of your PhD. You can actually get it in, your first year, second year, maybe even third year, you could apply. You cannot hold a previous PhD, which most people don't. So that shouldn't be an issue for anyone here on the call. Okay. The NSF Graduate Research Fellowship program is a program that offers a $34,000 stipend for 3 years. And you have the option to use this funding over a 5-year period. So what that means is that if you got it as a senior, you do not have to start that fellowship right when you start graduate school. You can delay it. And the reason that you might do that is, say, as we saw in those packages, your G1 year and your G2 year may be paid by your department, and then say your third, fourth, fifth, 6th year are paid for by your faculty member. So you might want to wait to implement this until you're, a G3, G4, G5 year for those 3 years to get this funding to take that pressure off of your faculty mentor. They also included $12,000, up to $12,000 per year for your tuition to be paid to your institution. So schools love this because it's money they don't have to pay to themselves in a very convoluted way. There is no post-PhD service requirement for this. There's no expectation that you become a faculty member or that you do anything else as a recipient of this. U.S. citizens, permanent residents, and U.S. nationals are eligible. You do have to be enrolled in the PhD or master's or be planning to be enrolled. So again, be a senior applying for this. I will say, I had a student one year who won the NSF, which, is very competitive. And they did not concurrently apply to graduate school. And so they had to forfeit that award, in which they were not eligible to receive it again. So you have to apply when you are applying to graduate school. You cannot just apply and plan to defer it, right? You have to apply at the same time you're planning to go to graduate school. So don't make that mistake. There's slightly newer rules on the NSF. I actually was a recipient of the NSF. And so you can either apply as a senior or in your gap years, if you do take gap years before applying to graduate school, or you can apply, you can apply in either your G1 or your G2 year of graduate school, but you can only apply once when you're in graduate school. So it used to be that you could apply 3 times, once before you entered graduate school in your G1 year and your G2 year. Now you have to choose between that G2 and G1 year when you want to apply for it. And I do recommend that you apply, if you don't receive it as a senior or in your gap year, that you do apply in your G2 year, because you're a little further along. What your project really will be. And you also, we'll just have more of kind of bearings on your graduate school and what you plan to do. So the deadline for these applications is there's a couple different deadlines depending on your discipline. It starts with life sciences on October 18th this year and goes through the 22nd. So there's different deadlines depending on your discipline. And so if you are not already working on this as a senior, then this might be too tight of a deadline for you. But for the juniors and younger students on the call, this is definitely something to check out. Or for seniors who want to take a gap year next year, this is definitely something you want to take a look at. I'll also say, most of the folks who I know who got an NSF did apply twice, right? So they did apply 2 different times to actually be able to win that award. So it's competitive. I think that the most recent published stats on it was usually it's about 12% of the applicants receive this. And most recently there was actually 16% is what was published for 2019 stats. So there were fewer applicants. So always take advantage of those opportunities when these statistics go up, in your favor, right? And then once again, Deb is putting these links in the chat. So, go ahead and grab those, save those, make a new tab on your browser so that you can check it out later. All right, the GEM Fellowship is one that I really like because this one actually offers both funding to master's and to PhD students. So there's very few funding opportunities out there for master's students. And so this is one of them, and this one's specific to STEM, right? So far, everything I've been showing you has been STEM focused. So the stipend is a little bit lower compared to the other ones that we've seen so far. So this is up to a $16,000 stipend. The master's, you can get that stipend over the length of the program. And the PhD, it's going to be applied to one academic year. They do offer full tuition and fees at GEM member universities. So this is limited to specific universities that are GEM members, but there's quite a few out there. So definitely check out the website and see what those schools are and see if they align with the schools that you're planning to apply to. An interesting caveat here for the GEM fellowships, which some people say, think is a negative, but I think is really cool, is that they require an internship at a GEM employer immediately after you, get sponsorship from this program. So for the master's, they expect 2 summers, and for the PhD, they expect 1 summer. But I think getting industry experience that's guaranteed and set up for you from somebody who's giving you money already seems like a really great deal. And I bet Brian works in industry. I bet he would back me up on that. What do you think, Brian?
Absolutely agree.
Okay, thank you. And so our eligibility here, again, is U.S. citizen, permanent resident. And here they specifically say historically underrepresented race or ethnicity. The Ford Foundation also has that as an eligibility criteria. They do want your GRE scores if you've taken it, but I know that many schools are moving away from GRE, and so you may not be taking the GRE. So, if you're not taking it for your school, don't feel obligated to do it for this fellowship. You do have to apply to 3 GEM member universities for your STEM degree, and you have to be admitted to one of those GEM member universities to receive this award. And again, current seniors and gap year students can apply, and PhD programs for those that are interested in applying for the PhD, and also master students can apply for the PhD version of this as well. And then your GPA for the master's program, you have to have a 2.8 out of 4.0, and for the PhD program, a 3.0 out of 4. And I saw there was a hand raised, so I can't see who had their hand raised. So can you go ahead and unmute yourself, and so we can hear a question?
Yes. I have a question. My laptop just died, so
Oh,
I
no.
noticed that it was recording. Is this being sent out later as well?
Yes, this is being recorded, and the link will the should be up on the LSMRCE website later on. I'm not sure exactly when Deb will have that ready, but it should be available to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. And Natalia had a question in the chat if this was only one that covers masters. There's one other that I have that does cover masters as well. So, which is next up in our list. And then was there any other hand raises? Did we get everybody? If you had your hand raised, huh?
I was saying, I think we are clear. I don't see
Okay.
any more, and you already got the one in the chat.
Perfect. Okay, great. So go ahead and cover our next one, which does again include masters. And so this is the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans. So the eligibility here is really important because this is very specific. So to be eligible for this one, either you or your parents must have immigrated to the US. Current seniors or gap year students are eligible to apply for this, and you have to be 30 years old or younger. So you could be a non-traditional student, but there is a limit there. And so this one offers a $25,000 stipend for up to 2 years. And this can be in any field, any type of degree. So master's, PhD, MD, MBA, like any program that you're doing, this fellowship will support. They also offer 50% tuition and fees up to $20,000 for 2 years. The first year of the fellowship cannot be deferred, so you do have to accept it right away, but the subsequent year could be deferred. There is an annual fellows conference that is required as a fellow. So they do expect you to attend that, much like the Ford Foundation also has a conference that they expect their fellows to be at. But this is an amazing networking opportunity for you to get to know this really amazing group of scholars. And again, any degree type and field is eligible. And this is usually due end of October, beginning of November. And this year, the deadline falls at the end of October on the 28th. So if you are a senior and you're interested, you would want to get moving right away with your recommenders to ask them about supporting you in this and start writing those essays soon. And then Deb has put in the chat the link to this, pdsoros.org, so you all can check that out, or feel free to pause the video and grab that link if you're watching the recording later. And then finally, we have this, the bridge to the doctorate. Any of our STEM graduates of LSAMP programs are eligible. Of course, you have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident to have been in an LSAMP program. There is a minimum GPA of 3.0 for your undergraduate GPA. There are different requirements depending on what LSAMP region you are in. So be sure to ask your coordinator about what those requirements might be. And of course, for the bridge to the doctorate, they are looking for folks who want to complete a PhD. Of course, some exceptions there, but really that's the goal, right? It's in the name, bridge to the doctorate. So they want you to be wanting to complete a PhD. So a little on this, it is a 2-year award. And so they provide funding. That funding is going to vary again, depending on the region and the institution that you would be at. They do include a salary and educational allowance. And it says that this one can actually be stacked with the GRFP. So the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship Program, which means that you could get 5 years of funding. So what this means is not stacked as in we're getting money from both at the same time. What this means is you could get 2 years of funding from bridge to the doctorate and then 3 years of funding with the NSF. And so you're able to get 5 full years of funding in combining those. There's additional conference eligibility as a bridge to the doctorate scholar. So there's, of course, the LSMRCE conference, the Lewis Stokes Midwest Regional Center for Excellence, and their conference is coming up in just a couple weeks. We're just rounding out the corner to that. There's also the Emerging Researchers National Conference, and then the Bridge to the Doctorate annual meeting. So some different conferences that you can attend as a Bridge to the Doctorate scholar. So that's really fantastic opportunity, again, for networking and for getting to present on your research. And then there's also mentorship and a peer cohort. So you get mentors, mentoring from the coordinators who run these programs. And then also, from your peers, from other, folks in that cohort who've been through LSAMP, who have and similar backgrounds to you. And then you may also get chances to mentor other undergrad LSAMP scholars who are, now that you're as a graduate student, right? So getting to give back to this community that's given so much to you. So really great program. The link to the map that Deb has been put in the chat. So check that out so you can see where the different opportunities are for the Bridge to the Doctorate. All right. So there's a number of other pre-doctoral fellowships. So this was just a sampling. These were the ones that, I highly recommend you check out, many of which of the ones that I highlighted here are specific to students of color in STEM or students of color, pursuing graduate education. And so really, targeted opportunities for our community as LSAMP scholars. Here's some other ones that you can check out. The NIH F31 is one that is much more involved. So the NSF, for perspective, the NSF GRFP Graduate Research Fellowship is a 2-page research proposal and a 3-page document that gives kind of your personal background, your research experience, and future directions. So 5 pages total. The NIH F31 is a 10-page research proposal that you would submit, and is really like a grant like you would write if you were a faculty member. So it is much more involved. And so those ones you apply for later once you're in the PhD. Then there's a couple other pre-doctoral ones here that are, you would apply for as a senior or in your first year of grad school. So there's a National Defense Science and Engineering Graduate Fellowship. There's a lot of folks get that in the life sciences. The Department of Energy Office of Science Graduate Fellowship also, funds a lot of students. You may think your research doesn't have anything to do with defense or energy, but they often, I had a friend that got the Department of Energy one who does cancer and metabolism. So don't count yourself out on these opportunities. And then there's the Hertz Foundation Graduate Fellowship, which is for the natural sciences. So if you're in, say chemistry or physics, mathematics, these folks are highly eligible for this type of fellowship. And that process is a little more involved, but definitely worth it. A very, very elite group of scholars win the Hertz every year. So that could be you. And then there's many, many other ones. So there's a list, a couple different sources of where you can find those. And Deb's going to put those in the chat for you now. Or if you're watching the recording, feel free to pause and try to put those into your browser now. So the first one is the NIH list non-NIH pre-doctoral fellowships. It's a pretty extensive, the most extensive I've seen list of graduate fellowships, and it's searchable and really user-friendly. So I recommend checking that out. Gradschools.com also has a list of fellowships available. And then of course, Pathways to Science. And Pathways to Science is just a good website to have saved on your browser. So they list different summer research opportunities, lots of information about grad school, and here about funding your PhD. So there's a number of different resources there. Thank you for staying with me tonight. This is my contact information. I'd love to hear from you. So feel free to check out my website or send me an email or friend me on any of the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. I have the same handle for all of them at Dr. Cammi Valdez, so that it's easy for you to find me. This is a photo that was made by one of my undergrad students for me, so I give them credit for that. And their handle on Instagram is at twinkletoes1428. And so with that, I'll take any questions that there are. We have a couple minutes left over, so I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have. Feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat. Reminder that there is a survey, so please do fill out that survey. And we also have a post-webinar survey. I'd love to hear how you're feeling after this talk. What are your thoughts about grad school? Are you in? Are you, now that you know you can get it for free and get paid to do it, how does this change your input?
Feel free to raise your hand if you like to speak up. All right. Darylis?
Yeah, I just kind of have a question. I've always been like on the border of like deciding whether or not I want to go, because as much as it's something that like I'm interested in my, like, I'm planning to go into engineering, so it's something that I'm really interested in, but I get genuinely worried because I hear a lot of people who have gone to graduate school, they say how like they were really stressed during that time. Like it's extremely stressful. So like, is there anything that you guys know that like can help people with like coping with that, like academic stress and pressure during that time? Because that's the only thing that's kind of like off-putting.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Managing that stress, it is definitely, you know, part of the journey in graduate school. I always talk about graduate school as an endurance test, right? It's about the ability to stick with it, to stick with a project, from start to finish. And that's not easy. And one of the challenges, of course, in the PhD is that the end time is open-ended, right? Like we're like 6 years, question mark, maybe a little faster for an engineer. But it's that end time is not finite, right? If you did an MBA, if you went to business school, right, it's 2 years, when you're done, right? Or same with, master's programs, 1 year, 2 years, even med school, right? It's 4 years and that you're done. And so I think that's that uncertainty, especially in the middle of your PhD, can be really daunting. And so, self-care and wellness is really important and part of that process, and figuring out what that looks like for you. For me, that was, I got my nails did. I got massages because my school had a wellness center where it was like cheaper massages for grad students. Was hanging out in the Du Bois Society, which was for the students of color, right? Or the minority biomedical scientists at Harvard. That was for students of color who were scientists, right? Like that was my like happy place, right? And so figuring out what that is for you, and how you can, cope with that. But there's also like counseling and mental health services. So going to see those when you need to, and knowing that, right? So I think there's a lot of introspection that you have to do in figuring out like, how do you keep yourself well, and taking the time to do that, and saying that's okay, right? So I think that's a great question. And I think if you I think you can figure it out, right?
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Diana, I see your hands raised.
Yes, thank you. This was very informative. I really appreciate it. And actually it releases the fear that I have, because my biggest fear is related to finances. Like, okay, this is my dream to get a PhD, but how I'm gonna do for the next years if I will not have the time to get a job, and I have been working all the time. So I have a question related, like just in the case that you got accepted to different schools, how would you decide, financially talking, what is the best package, or how would you balance that decision? Because I feel that in my case there is a huge weight on the finances, like probably okay, will I go to a school that is providing me more resources just to be sure that I will not get into debt or financial hardship during the next years? Or should I look first, during the first years, securing funding from different sources? What would you do?
I totally hear that, right? That, money matters, right? And that's why we're having this conversation, right? If it didn't matter, we wouldn't dedicate, many seminars to this topic, right? And so, the first thing I will say is that even though money matters, right? You have to pick a school that's going to be a good fit for you. So the fit has to be there. So you don't want to let the money totally influence your decision, because you do have to be happy there, right? We're talking about a 6-year time period. And I think it's important to be happy in the location. I think it's important to be okay with whatever's offered in that area. Do you like urban areas? Do you like more rural areas? Do you like hiking and that kind of and outdoorsy stuff? Or do you like being in a, metropolitan area where there's lots of shopping, right? What is it that makes you happy? Because you're going to spend a lot of time there. But also on the program side of things, are there faculty there that are doing really interesting stuff that like you want to be there, right? And are there also the resources there to support you, right? Whether that's, you know, having affinity groups like Latinx student group or Black Student Association or whatever it may be, you know, to be able to support you and the whole you during your, you know, graduate experience, right? So I think the fit of the program matters. And then the other piece is like, you may not be comparing apples and oranges, right? So if you're looking at a stipend, and I know that you mentioned you're going to be going to Boston to check out schools. Boston's a very expensive, you know, cost of living, as is New York City, as is like lots of places in California. And so even though they may offer higher, you know, stipends, you know, when you factor in the rent and everything else that you have to pay there, it may be the same as $20,000, right, offered in Kentucky, because their cost of living is so much different. So you want to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples and not just saying, okay, I want the highest paying stipend I can possibly get. That being said, most of the schools are thinking about cost of living when they offer those stipends. So they have factored in some of that for you in determining what they will offer their students, because they want it to be a living stipend. You're not going to be saving a ton of money. You're not going to be sending a ton of money home to family and things like that during the PhD, but it will give you enough money to live on, to live, you know, relatively comfortably. You might need roommates, but you're going to be able to eat. You're going to be able to have, you know, a roof over your head, and you're going to have some spending money for fun too. So that should all be available within the amount that the stipend offers.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there other raised hands? Anybody else have a question? Before we have I think, Brian, are you going to close us out tonight?
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? Thank you so much for your engagement tonight. I really hope this gave a little bit of clarity, or at least got you leaning towards the PhD. As I said earlier, there's many reasons why you cannot pursue it. And really, I think one of our goals is just to slowly knock down those barriers, those myths, those concerns. And so I do ask you to take Dr. Valdez up on her offer to support you. So if you need her contact information, make sure you're reaching out to her, asking those questions to build that confidence up. Because what I would hate for you to do is to have wanted to get your PhD and to have let the time go by. Because one thing that we know for sure is that the time is just going to continue to move. The question is, what do you do while the time is moving? So please take advantage of this opportunity to get your questions answered and build that confidence up to make that decision with the best information that you have. Don't make the decision to pursue it or not based off of other people's opinions, myths, and things that are not facts. So make sure that you have the best information so you can make the best decision for yourself. Also, we look forward to you attending. And Deb, if you can drop any information that you can about our annual conference coming up, we want to make sure that you are in attendance. We have a wonderful time every year. Knock on wood here. We are hoping that this is our last year that we have to be virtual with one another, and we can be back in person next year. We already are planning that. We just need everything to align to ensure that nothing interrupts that. So please, we look forward to seeing you on the virtual sessions. We have wonderful keynote speakers. We have wonderful breakout sessions. We have networking sessions designed for you. And for those that have attended in the past, you know it's an awesome time. And I do challenge you to bring yourself and to bring others. We also still do have an internship with Eaton, along with next summer, we have our internship with Fermilab. So please, as I mentioned before, if Deb's emails are going into your spam box or whatever other folders, you may want to change your settings and make sure that those emails hit your inbox on the main page, because there's wonderful information that is in there. Deb, did I miss anything? Hopefully I covered it all.
You got it all, Brian. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, Dr. Valdez, we'll let you do the send-off tonight.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everyone for attending and being here and present, active, both in the chat and raising your hands and being willing to unmute yourself. I think, I just echo what Brian said. Don't let this be a reason that you're not applying to grad school. Don't let the funding be a reason that you don't pursue your dreams. You guys got this. I have been in your shoes. I was an LSAM scholar and I was able to get full funding to go to grad school, but also get fellowships. And you all are really, really competitive as LSAM scholars. And don't forget the power in that you already have a ton going for you. And I know you can do it. I hope you'll reach out to me with questions, and feel free, contact me, friend me on any of the social medias. And I'd love to keep talking about this funding and make sure that you are comfortable going into your grad experience. So thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Take care, everyone. See you at the conference.
Yes, see you at the conference soon, 2 weeks.
All right.